is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Tholahungva. Tribal enterprises and Native-owned small businesses are being helped by the Native American Bank in Denver, Colorado. The bank announced this week it arranged nearly $16 million in loans for the Paycheck Protection Plan under the CARES Act. In 2 weeks, the bank took in as many loan applications as it typically sees in 1 year, according to the bank president, Tom Ogard. One of the tribes receiving a loan is the Ute Indian tribe in the Unita and Ouray reservations in Utah. This will allow the Ute Tribal Enterprises, LLC, to continue operating and employing its people. A spokesperson for the tribe calls it a blessing for the lives of more than 230 families. The Rosebud Sioux tribe is banning alcohol on its reservation during the pandemic. This comes after some tribal members showed aggressive behavior towards law enforcement and tribal officials. Tribal leaders say some people don't want to abide by the stay-at-home orders. And it was a unanimous vote by the tribal council during the session this week, and it is in effect immediately. The upscale retailer Neiman Marcus is being sued by the Sealaska Heritage Institute. The allegations include use of the term Raven's Tail, which is a weaving tradition of Northwest Coast Native tribes, and unlawfully infringing on the copyright of the famous Northwest Coast artist Clarissa Rizal. Sealaska filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Alaska. It's asking for an injunction to stop Neiman Marcus and its parent company from selling the garment called Raven's Tail Knitted Coat. The price tag is more than $2,500. The lawsuit accuses the retailer of violating the Indian Arts and Crafts Act. In addition, Sealaska is seeking statutory, punitive, and other damages. It says it will give any funds from the lawsuit to Rizal's family, which owns the copyright to the design. The artist created it in 1996, and the work is registered with the U.S. Copyright Office and licensed exclusively to Sealaska. For the latest numbers of COVID positive tests in Indian Country, let's go now to Jordan Bennett-Begay, our Washington editor. Jordan?
Yate Patty, Yate Shikis, Do. So we had an increase of cases, in the last 24 hours. Right now, the number stands at 2,045 cases and 76 deaths within the Indian health system. Again, that is 2,045 positive confirmed cases and 76 deaths within the Indian health system. And a lot of this is collected, this data is collected by Indian Country Today. And one tribe actually saw their first case. The Winnebago tribe in Nebraska saw their first case of COVID-19. Hopi had an additional 6 cases. Colville tribes also had 2 new cases and 1 death that they just announced with the county that they're in. Cherokee Nation saw 2 more cases, and the Navajo Nation had an increase of 76 cases and 3 deaths so far. And again, this data is collected by Indian Country Today. We actively go out and seek this. Indian Country does its best to, but we also look at submissions from the Google form that's on our COVID-19 syllabus on our platform. And we also get emails too from tribes, but largely this is a big job for a small team. And so we look for these submissions as a way to create a more comprehensive database for health professionals to look at, for lawmakers, and for the public overall too.
And getting the information to our Indian communities, because people want to know how it's affecting their own personal tribe. And of course, with so many people being intermarried with tribes, there's that concern for several tribes. That's the number of positive tests has increased significantly from yesterday to today. I think about 50 more new cases.
Yes, we did. And actually, this is, we're getting above 2,000 cases. And again, this isn't even all of the data that's out there. You have, again, veterans to consider from veterans hospitals who go there, people who, go outside the Indian health system, which is, who go outside of like tribal clinics or within the IHS system. You also have urban Indians, who have health insurance, and also those who don't have health insurance too, who can't get tested.
So this is the best database that we have, and we recognize that there are still some areas that we would love to have reporting. So Jordan Bennett-Begay, thank you so much.
Yeah, Patty.
And we'll be right back. Welcome back. Friday is our reporter roundtable, and we're joined today by Shannon Shaw Duty, and she is the editor of Osage News in Oklahoma. Welcome to our program, Shannon.
Away, Patty. Thank you for having me.
Sure. And also joining us today is Dalton Walker, and he's a national correspondent for Indian Country Today. Hi, Dalton.
Bonjour, Patty. Miigwech for having me.
Absolutely. So, a lot to cover here when it comes to how COVID-19 is impacting our communities. Shannon, you've been covering this story, of course, since it started hitting the U.S. Tell us a little bit about the first stories that you reported and how it impacted the Osage people.
Well, we just wanted everyone to be informed of this incoming threat of the virus. And of course, we were watching all of the news coverage across the country and the world, trying to gauge when it was going to hit the Midwest, when it might hit Oklahoma, and then when it might hit our tribal population. So we just wanted to follow those trends and keep everyone updated.
And you actually had the first positive test in your community around March 25th?
Yes, we had two. Actually, we had our first two positive tests. However, we were not able to confirm that they were actually Osage tribal members, but they did visit our Wajaji Health Center, which is our tribal clinic.
Yeah. So when did the stay-at-home order go into effect?
The stay-at-home order went into effect about 3 weeks to 4 weeks ago.
And how has that been working out for the people? Are they staying at home?
For the most part, yes. And the numbers that I saw today are very encouraging. Our governor, is slowly reopening our state today. So all of the non-essential businesses are opening today. However, we have not had any deaths confirmed by COVID in our community. And just a little background, we are not a traditional reservation, as is most of the other tribes in the country. Our land was allotted in 1906, so we are integrated and assimilated with our neighbors. So within our community, when I say our tribal population, it's just our Osage members that are living within our historical boundary lines, which is Osage County. So within Osage County, there have only been 8 deaths. Now, that is very sad, and they have families, and our hearts go out to them. But we are very relieved that we have had only 8 deaths within our community. And again, none of those deaths have been confirmed to be Osage Nation tribal members, but right now we only have 22 active cases within our county. And our county is the largest county in Oklahoma. It's a little bit larger than the state of Rhode Island. So to have only 22 active cases left, and we've had 38 recoveries, is very good. And it shows me that most of the community is adhering to the stay-at-home order, the social distancing. I see many of our tribal members, because I live in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, which is the capital of the Osage Nation. And on my biweekly trips to the grocery store, or maybe some drive arounds town just to get out of the house with my family, I do see Osage tribal members, and they have on masks. They have on masks, and we have many of our seamstresses in the county that are making masks with tribal designs. I mean, everyone's getting creative, and everyone's.
Yeah, you wrote a story about that. How they really pitched in and started sewing those masks.
Yes, and I've seen some masks lately with some traditional Osage designs on there, so I thought that was really neat. And I'm pretty proud of our community. It seems like we've really kept the virus at bay, and I hope that with the governor's reopening today, a slow reopening, he has a 3-tiered reopening, I'm hoping that we can keep these positive numbers and keep the virus at bay.
And is your tribal leadership on board with the governor on reopening?
Well, our tribal leadership does not have a statement at this time on the governor slowly reopening today, but our casinos have not reopened. Now, we have heard reports that may be mid-May when our casinos might reopen, but that is not confirmed. Our tribal operations are still essential workers only. Most of our programs and services are operating right now, as is the Osage News, but there's very few people in those offices. Everyone is mostly working from home or staying home.
Okay. So, you never know how close you come to somebody who's positive for the coronavirus. And that's an issue, and that's why people are saying we need widespread testing to find out which one of us is carrying that virus. So let me bring in Dalton, because Dalton, you had a really close scare with the coronavirus in early March.
Yeah, the first weekend of March, I'm based in Phoenix, but the first weekend in March, I went to the NICAR conference in New Orleans, computer assisted reporting conference. And this was at the early stages of the COVID-19. We still weren't sure what was all going on. It was more international stuff. The people with the conference kept us alert on if it's still happening, what kind of precautions they were doing, sanitizer, things like that. So that was nice to hear. And I went, it was pretty normal. People were packed, the rooms are packed, people were among groups. Like the one thing they told us was not to give hugs or shake hands, and a lot of people did not do that, which was great. But there was a lot of people in the hotel, and even outside we're just in groups. So when you think about it now, it was pretty scary. And when I came home, which was March 8th, Sunday, we learned not long after that a conference participant had tested positive. And so that was a little scary to hear. I felt confident because I wasn't told that I was near or had met this person. So it was kind of a wait and see type of thing. But the whole experience itself was a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it was certainly, because it impacted our newsroom in Phoenix. Once we got that word, then you were actually sent home and told to quarantine or self-isolate for 2 weeks?
Yeah, I was one of the last ones in the newsroom that evening when I was notified about the person who tested positive. And the first thing I did was I got to make sure I let my editor know, because I wasn't sure what to do. I was feeling fine. And he told me just to watch myself, stay home. And this basically was really helpful, and kind of, I wasn't nervous or scared or anything. I was just kind of more wondering what the next steps were, and if I was going to shut down the building. I was worried that a lot of people would have to stay home because of me doing what I did. I was able to write a first person perspective on that experience, and that kind of sheds light of what I seen and kind of my initial thoughts and kind of what was going through my mind during the whole process.
Right.
But I'm
And
thankful no one affected. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say it was something along the lines of COVID and gumbo.
Yeah, that's right. I went to New Orleans thinking, well, first I'm going to learn all this data stuff that I can help our Indian Country Today team move forward down that direction. And secondly, I was thinking of all the good food I was going to be able to eat. A lot of it was gumbo, a lot of good stuff. And so when I started my article, I mentioned that was my perspective going in, data and gumbo.
Well, we're fortunate that, nothing happened. You're okay. You never got sick. We cleaned our newsroom, just with the Clorox wipes and such. But, and then after that, we all ended up having to work from home. And so we've not been in our office, and that's been a disruption. So thanks for sharing your story on that, Dalton, and we're glad that you're okay. And so, you never know when you end up, again, in the course of your work, of going to a conference, or, in this case, people just going out to the grocery store, who you may come in contact with. You wrote a really powerful story, Shannon, about the healthcare workers there at your tribal health facility. And tell us about the nurse that you talked to.
Well, I spoke with 3 health professionals. One works at the Stillwater Medical Center. She is from our Gray Horse District, Chelsea Pease Ingle. The second person I interviewed was Dr. Leighton Lamson, who is he's a neurological specialist at Yale. And then the third person I spoke with was Cherie Lookout, and she works with our Osage Nation Home Health. And all of their stories touched me, but I really wanted to get to the heart of what they were experiencing in their day-to-day jobs and with their families. And Cherie really had a great first-person story about her daily routine as she works with our elders. And through her work, you know, she knows that they are at the most at risk. So whenever she was coming home, she was having to change her routine and shower and put her clothes immediately in the washing machine. She couldn't let her kids touch her. They all grew accustomed to this routine, and the thing she missed most was her parents. And her story is most impactful because her father is Herman Mowgre Lookout, who is one of our last remaining full-bloods. And he is also the founder of our Osage orthography for our language. He is our master teacher and one of our Osage treasures. So for her to say that she missed sitting with her mother and father, it really touched me, because the prospect of not being able to speak with Mowgre Lookout during his last days, if he were to get infected, is heartbreaking. And I think that is heartbreaking for all tribal nations to lose our elders, because those are our most important people.
Yeah, there's just so much concern, and so her experience there, and so staying away is protecting her family.
Right.
Dalton, you wrote a story about scams and targeting elders in this whole pandemic.
Yeah, I was looking over social media, and a lot of people were kind of wondering about how they were going to get their stimulus check. And some people mentioned that there were scams or weird phone calls. And I thought, well, I know our elderly are the most vulnerable, and I knew a couple firsthand that had questions. So I thought that would be a great idea to pursue. So the idea was to make sure that I could explain the best I could about scams that already exist. Unfortunately, there's a lot of them. I talked to a couple experts about it, and then with the COVID-19 related scams, and how basically trying to explain what are the more common ones, kind of some tips on what you can do to not be a victim. And I really wanted to make sure our elders at least knew about the story.
Yes, it's a really important information. So, and it's sad to think that there are people out there willing to scam people anytime, but especially during a pandemic when I think we have enough to worry about. Shannon, you mentioned the tribe also received HUD grants for housing.
Yes, we received a little over $300,000 for housing, and immediately our housing department issued a rent and forgiveness for all of our Osage homeowners that own homes through the tribe, but also especially for our senior citizens, our elders who live in our our housing complex. Their rent was forgiven for 3 months. So the whole community really applauded that effort, and that was James Wygant who did that for our Osage Nation housing.
Wow, so a little more relief there too.
Yes.
Well, you know, in the middle of all this pandemic, there is other news happening. And Dalton, you were able to write about 2 big stories this week. You want to start with the announcement of the latest Schimmel sister to play basketball at the college level?
Yes, Mulan Schimmel is a young lady who falls in line with her older sisters. More people are familiar with Shawnee and Jude. I was fortunate to chat with her briefly. She's in Oregon right now with her family getting ready for the season. But the big news with her is that she made an announcement that she was joining the University of Cincinnati Bearcats, which is a pretty good program in Division I basketball. And for a lot of Native youth, making it to Division I is really the ultimate goal when it comes to basketball. So I was glad we were able to chat a little bit about her experience.
Why didn't she pick Louisville? That's where Jude and Shawnee went. She's kind of breaking with her sisters' college careers.
Well, she was quickly first to say that she owes a lot to her older sisters. She's a few years younger, She was first to say that their experiences has humbled her and made her more aware of what to do come next step. And a part of it, I think, for her is that she wants to set her own trail. She's kind of wants to do her thing. She knows her name on the back of her jersey is a big deal, especially in Indian country. But I also know she wants people to kind of recognize her for her own accomplishments. And I just believe Louisville was up there. But I also think Cincinnati is on par, and they're going to make some noise, especially if they are able to use her.
Okay. So, yes, I think probably Louisville is really sad that they don't have the third Schimmel sister.
Yeah, that's that would have been fun. I remember a few years back watching Shoni and Jude, their run in March Madness, and this took over my life because it was such a great thing to see these young Native ladies just blowing up on national TV, ESPN. Everyone was talking about them. So it would have been a great story.
Well, I've had the chance to watch Shoni play in the WNBA. I'm a huge fan. Anyone who knows me knows I love my Mercury. But when Shoni came to town, I stepped aside and I cheered for Shoni's team, or Shoni specifically. So, hey, we all have our sports teams that we enjoy. So the other one was a little twist on the butter story of the week, Dalton.
This one was really interesting. Land O'Lakes made this announcement in February that they were going to move forward from their packaging of their iconic butter image. And me being the kid from Minnesota, I didn't really know that they were that well known beyond where I grew up, people among me. But when it really caught fire on social media and national publications were even writing about this, especially now when COVID-19 is the top headline getter, I was like, okay, there's something there. I want to see what's there. And when I learned more, I didn't know that there was a Native artist angle, but I didn't know too much beyond that. But doing some digging, looking around, especially on Facebook, I was able to find the artist's son, and he talked about his dad, Patrick Desjardins, who's a Red Lake Ojibwe, and he had a great story. And Patrick, he updated the icon of the Native woman on Land O'Lakes back in the 50s. So this thing was around for decades, which was pretty neat in itself. So I was able to kind of capture the historical aspect, but at the same time capture this Native angle, this Native perspective that was a little overlooked by a lot of stories, that this artist behind this design and how much effort they put in and what it meant to their family and what it meant to Native people who grew up knowing that this was a part of a Native artist's work.
Right. So, and people can go onto our platform, indiancountrytoday.com, and read your story about that. So, very interesting background information, the story behind the story, as we say. So, Dalton, thank you so much. Shannon, any last thoughts on COVID, on any other coverage, any other stories making the news in Osage County?
Well, we're just going to follow the numbers. We're going to follow the state health data. I know we have a real responsibility of letting our tribal members know the dangers that are coming around our community. So we're just going to stay on top of it, watch the data, keep putting out helpful news articles about how to guard yourself, how to social distance, and just do the best we can.
All right. And also looking at the hotline that the nation has established for questions about COVID.
Yes, our Osage Nation has a hotline, and so does the state health department. And I really feel like everyone is working together. There really is no us and them during this time of pandemic. The community, a lot of the non-Native community watches our news as well, and we routinely get messages from non-Native members of our community thanking us for keeping them up to date on community news, because most of the community news is gone. A lot of the advertising revenue is dried up, and a lot of people have been furloughed or laid off. So we are very blessed to keep funding going and being able to do our jobs during this time, and we take it very seriously.
Shannon Shaw Duty, editor of Osage News, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And Dalton Walker, our national correspondent for Indian Country Today. Thank you, Dalton.
Miigwech, Patty. Miigwech, Shannon.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you on Monday. Take care of yourselves. Your life is precious. I'm Patty Tolahungva. Thanks for joining us.
This is Indian Country Today.